The early morning sun filtered through the palm trees of Umudike, casting long shadows across the red earth. The village buzzed with life as women pounded yam, men sharpened their machetes for the fields, and children chased each other around the compounds. It was a seemingly ordinary day, but for Adeobi, it was the beginning of a battle that would change her life forever. The family compound of Nzi Okonkwo was unusually quiet. Inside the main hut, Okonkwo's voice boomed, filling the space with authority. His wives sat cross-legged on mats, their eyes downcast, as they listened to their husband deliver the news that would disrupt the fragile peace of his household. Adeobi, Okonkwo said, fixing his youngest daughter with a stern gaze. Chief Aguba has asked for your hand in marriage. It is a great honor. He is a man of wealth and power, and this union will bring blessings to our family. The announcement hit Adeobi like a thunderclap. Her hands froze mid-motion as she ground dried pepper in a mortar. For a moment, the only sound was the rhythmic pounding of her siblings helping in the kitchen. "Papa," she began, her voice quiet but firm, "I will not marry him." The room fell silent, save for the faint cries of a baby in the next hut. Okonkwo's wives exchanged nervous glances, their faces a mixture of shock and dread. No one defied Okonkwo, the respected head of their household, and certainly not a daughter. "What did you say?" Okonkwo's voice was low, dangerous. Adeobi straightened her back, meeting her father's gaze. "I said I will not marry Chief Aguba." Her father rose slowly to his feet, towering over her. The tension in the room was palpable, the air heavy with unspoken warnings. "You will not," he repeated, his tone incredulous. "Do you understand what you're saying? Chief Aguba is a great man. He has chosen you to be his wife, and you will honor this family by accepting." "I understand, Papa," Adeobi replied, her voice steady despite the rapid pounding of her heart. "But I am not cattle to be sold. I will not marry him." Her words echoed in the room like a challenge thrown at the feet of a giant. Okonkwo's face darkened with anger. His wives sat frozen, too afraid to speak. Finally, one of them, Adeobi's stepmother Neka, broke the silence. "Adeobi, think carefully about what you're saying," she said, her voice trembling. "This is not just about you. The entire family will suffer if you refuse this marriage." Adeobi turned to Neka, her gaze unwavering. "It is about me. It is my life. I will not live it in misery." By midday, the entire village had heard of Adeobi's defiance. Women whispered behind their hands at the marketplace, their eyes darting toward Okonkwo's compound. Men shook their heads in disapproval, muttering about the dangers of a girl who dared to challenge her father. "She has no respect," said one woman, slicing plantains with quick, practiced motions. "A daughter who defies her father is a curse upon her family." "But she's brave," another whispered. "Chief Aguba is a cruel man. Everyone knows how he treats his wives." The news reached Chief Aguba that afternoon. The wealthy elder was seated in his spacious compound, surrounded by servants who catered to his every whim. When a messenger brought word of Adeobi's refusal, his face turned red with anger. "She dares to reject me," he bellowed, slamming his palm on the armrest of his chair. "That insolent girl will regret this." He summoned his most loyal ally, Nwaifa, a cunning and opportunistic man who thrived on Aguba's patronage. "Spread the word," Aguba ordered. "Let the village know that Adeobi is cursed. No man who marries her will prosper." Nwaifa nodded eagerly, relishing the opportunity to curry favor. "It will be done, Chief." The elders convened that evening, their meeting held under the large Iroko tree at the center of the village. The air was cool, the sky painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Seated in a circle on wooden stools, the elders debated the crisis. "This girl has brought shame upon her family," said one elder, his voice stern. "Her defiance is a sign of disrespect, not only to her father but to our traditions. The gods will not look kindly upon this rebellion," another elder agreed. "She must be punished." But Elder Udo, a man known for his wisdom and measured words, raised his hand. "Let us not be hasty. Adeobi is young. Perhaps she does not understand the weight of her actions." Chief Aguba, who had joined the council to press his case, interrupted. "This is not about her youth, Udo. This is about a girl who seeks to undermine the order of our village. If we do not act, others will follow her example." The council murmured in agreement. After a long discussion, the elders agreed to summon Adeobi to the village square the following day to face their judgment. The village square was packed. Men, women, and children gathered in anticipation, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The elders sat in a semicircle on raised stools, their expressions solemn. Chief Aguba stood nearby, his arms crossed and his face a mask of triumph. Adeobi arrived with her father, her head held high despite the murmurs that rippled through the crowd. She stepped into the center of the square, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. "Adeobi," the chief elder began, his voice grave. "You have been summoned here to answer for your actions. It is the will of the gods that you marry Chief Aguba, yet you have refused. Do you deny this?" "I do not deny it," Adeobi said, her voice clear. "I refused because I do not want to marry him." Gasps erupted from the crowd. The chief elder's expression darkened. "Your refusal is an insult to your father, to Chief Aguba, and to the gods. Do you understand the gravity of your defiance?" "I understand," Adeobi replied. "But I cannot marry a man I do not love. The gods gave me a heart to choose, and I have chosen." Chief Aguba stepped forward, his voice dripping with disdain. "You speak of choice, but what choice do you give your family? Your father's honor is at stake, yet you choose to defy him for your selfish desires." Adeobi turned to him, her gaze sharp. "What about my honor, Chief Aguba? What about the honor of the women you treat as property? Do the gods demand our suffering, or is that the demand of men like you?" The square fell silent. Even the elders seemed taken aback by her boldness. Chief Aguba's face twisted with fury. "You are a foolish girl," he spat. "Your defiance will destroy your family." The council adjourned without a clear resolution. The elders, caught between tradition and the growing whispers of dissent among the younger villagers, decided to postpone their judgment. Chief Aguba stormed out of the square, his anger boiling over. At Okonkwo's compound, the tension was unbearable. Adeobi's father refused to speak to her, retreating to his hut in silence. Her stepmothers avoided her, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and disapproval. Only Chaik, her older brother, dared to offer her comfort. "You're brave," he told her that night as they sat outside, the stars scattered like diamonds across the sky. "But you've made powerful enemies." "I didn't choose this fight, Chaik," Adeobi replied. "But I won't back down." Over the next few days, Aguba escalated his retaliation. His men spread rumors about Adeobi, painting her as a cursed child who had brought misfortune upon her family. He bribed the village griot to weave tales of women who defied tradition and met terrible fates. But something unexpected began to happen. Younger villagers, particularly women, started to speak in hushed tones of admiration for Adeobi. Her defiance sparked a quiet rebellion in their hearts, a yearning for freedom they had long suppressed. "She's brave," whispered Nkem, a girl of 15. "I wish I had her courage." "She's reckless," another replied. "But maybe that's what we need." As the village simmered with tension, Adeobi's resolve only deepened. She knew the fight ahead would not be easy, but she also knew she could not give up. The gods had not struck her down for speaking the truth, and that truth burned brighter in her heart with each passing day. Standing by the river one evening, she whispered to herself, "If the gods are with me, I will endure. If they are not, I will fight alone." Little did she know, she would not be alone for long. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the village of Umudike. Adeobi stood on the edge of her father's compound, gazing into the distance where the forest loomed like a dark, impenetrable wall. Her defiance against Chief Aguba and the elders had ignited whispers throughout the village, but it had also stirred something deeper: fear. Whispers of curses followed her wherever she went. Women clutched their children tighter as she passed, and men averted their gazes. Even her stepmothers, who once scolded her with familiarity, now avoided her entirely. She was a girl isolated by her courage, abandoned by tradition, and judged by a community gripped by fear. But Adeobi was not one to crumble. That night, as the stars began to sprinkle the sky, She resolved to seek answers. If the gods were truly angry, as the elders claimed, she needed to hear it from someone who knew the truth. And in Umudike, only one person could provide that truth: the old woman in the forest. The old woman, Neka, was a name spoken in hushed tones among the villagers. Some claimed she was a witch, cursed by the gods to live in solitude. Others said she was a wise seer, abandoned by the village after a prophecy that no one wanted to believe. Whatever the truth, no one dared to venture into the forest where she lived. Adeobi remembered the stories her grandmother had told her when she was a child. Neka speaks to the spirits, her grandmother had whispered one night by the fire. But the spirits are not kind to those who seek her lightly. Only the brave or the desperate enter her domain. Now, standing at the threshold of the forest, Adeobi felt both brave and desperate. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, clutching a small oil lamp. The night air was cool, and the sounds of the forest echoed with an eerie stillness. She glanced over her shoulder one last time before stepping into the darkness. The forest enveloped her almost immediately. The towering trees blocked out the moonlight, leaving only the flickering glow of her lamp to light the way. Each step she took was accompanied by the crunch of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. The air was thick, filled with the earthy scent of damp wood and moss. Adeobi had grown up hearing tales of spirits that haunted the forest, vengeful beings who preyed on the unwary. She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the path ahead. But the deeper she ventured, the harder it became to silence the whispers in her mind. A rustling sound to her left made her freeze. She held the lamp high, her eyes scanning the shadows. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure, a dark shape moving between the trees, but when she blinked, it was gone. Her heart raced as she quickened her pace, clutching the lamp tighter. The forest seemed alive, its branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Owls hooted in the distance, and the occasional cry of an unseen animal echoed through the darkness. But Adeobi pressed on, her resolve unshaken. After what felt like hours, Adeobi saw a faint light in the distance. Relief flooded through her as she realized it must be Neka's hut. She quickened her pace, the light growing brighter with each step. The hut was small and weathered, its thatched roof sagging under the weight of time. Bundles of herbs hung from the eaves, and a faint plume of smoke rose from a chimney. Adeobi hesitated at the threshold, her heart pounding. What if the stories were true? What if Neka cursed those who disturbed her? But she had come too far to turn back now. Summoning her courage, Adeobi knocked on the wooden door. "Enter," came a voice from within, raspy but strong, like the crackle of dry leaves. Adeobi pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs and something metallic, like iron. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of dried plants, animal bones, and other mysterious objects. In the center of the room sat Neka, her eyes sharp and gleaming in the dim light. "So, the daughter of Orkonkwo has come," Neka said, her voice carrying an edge of knowing. "What brings you to the forest, child?" Adeobi hesitated, her fingers tightening around the lamp. I need answers," she said finally. "The elders say the gods are angry with me. They say I have brought a curse upon my family. I need to know if it's true." Neka leaned back, studying Adeobi with a piercing gaze. "And what do you believe, child?" "I don't know what to believe," Adeobi admitted. "All I know is that I cannot live a life that is not my own." The old woman's expression softened. She gestured for Adeobi to sit. "Then you have come to the right place. The truth is not always what the elders say it is." Neka spoke slowly, her words weaving a tapestry of revelations that shook Adeobi to her core. "The gods are not angry with you, child," Neka said. "They are angry with this village. For generations, your people have twisted the old ways to suit their desires. A man's madness is not the curse of the gods, it is guilt and fear that eat away at him. A woman's silence is not divine will, it is the fear of men who do not want their power questioned." Adeobi's eyes widened. "But the elders. The elders are blind," Neka interrupted. "They cling to their traditions because they fear change. But change is coming, whether they like it or not. You, Adeobi, are the spark that will ignite it." Adeobi felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Then I am not cursed. Neka shook her head. No, child. But your path will not be easy. Chief Aguba will not stop until he destroys you. You must be clever and strong. You must gather allies who believe in you, for this fight is not yours alone. Neka reached into a small wooden box and pulled out a charm made of twine and beads. She handed it to Adeobi. Take this. It will protect you from harm, but it will not shield you from pain. That, you must endure. Adeobi clutched the charm tightly. Thank you, she said softly. The journey back to the village felt even longer than the journey into the forest. The shadows seemed darker, the sounds of the forest louder. But Adeobi walked with a new sense of purpose, the old woman's words echoing in her mind. When she reached the edge of the forest, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon. The village was still quiet, the air cool and fresh. Adeobi slipped back into her father's compound unnoticed, but she knew her absence would not go unnoticed for long. By midday, the whispers began. Someone had seen her entering the forest the night before, and rumors spread like wildfire. She went to the witch to summon spirits, one woman said. She's cursed, another added. She's bringing the gods' wrath upon us. Chief Aguba seized the opportunity to fan the flames of fear. He marched into the village square, addressing anyone who would listen. This girl is dangerous, he declared. She defies tradition, and now she consorts with witches. If we do not act, the gods will punish us all. The elders convened once again, their faces dark with worry. They summoned Adeobi to the square, demanding answers. When Adeobi stood before the council, she held her head high, the charm hidden beneath her shawl. The chief elder fixed her with a stern gaze. Is it true that you went to the forest? He asked. Yes, Adeobi replied. I went to seek answers. The crowd gasped. Chief Aguba stepped forward, his voice dripping with scorn. And what answers did the witch give you, girl? Did she teach you how to curse the village? No, Adeobi said firmly. She told me the truth, that the gods are not angry with me, but with those who use their names to justify lies and greed. The square erupted into chaos. Some shouted in agreement, while others called for her punishment. The elders struggled to restore order, but the seeds of rebellion had already been sown. That night, as Adeobi sat by the river, Obi approached her. The hunter had watched her stand against the council, and his respect for her had grown. You were brave today, he said, sitting beside her. Brave or foolish? Adeobi asked, her voice tinged with doubt. Both, Obi said with a faint smile. But sometimes foolishness is what the world needs. Adeobi turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you. Obi nodded. You're not alone in this. There are others who believe in what you're doing. We'll stand with you. The days following Adeobi's return from the forest were tumultuous. Her bold defiance had ignited a fire in Umudike, one that was both threatening and inspiring. Younger women whispered her name in admiration, their voices rising in hope as they questioned the traditions that had kept them in chains. But for many of the elders and traditionalists, Adeobi was a symbol of chaos. And no one felt the sting of her rebellion more than Chief Aguba. Humiliated before the village, mocked in private by his peers, and stripped of the certainty of his control, Aguba seethed in his compound, plotting his next move. The flickering light of torches cast long shadows across Aguba's compound as he convened a late-night meeting with his most trusted allies. Among them was Nwaifa, his right-hand man, whose loyalty was fueled by greed. The other men present were village enforcers, fearsome and loyal to Aguba due to years of bribes and manipulation. She must be stopped, Aguba said, his voice cold and venomous. He paced back and forth, his hands clenched behind his back. Her rebellion is spreading. If we let her continue, soon every girl in this village will think she can defy us. What do you propose, Chief? Nwaifa asked cautiously. Aguba stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. We will strike her where it hurts most. Her family. Her home. Let her see what happens to those who dare to defy me. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Chief, one of them ventured, the elders already spared her once. If we act openly, we risk angering them. Aguba's face darkened. Then we won't act openly. Burn Okonkwo's compound. Make it look like an accident. Let the flames be a warning to her and everyone who supports her. Nwaifa nodded, though his expression was hesitant. As you wish, Chief. It will be done. As the village prepared for the next market day, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The women who had begun to rally around Adeobi moved cautiously, their excitement tempered by fear of retaliation. Even Adeobi felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on her shoulders. It was Obi who brought her the first warning. The hunter found Adeobi near the river, where she often gathered with the young women who had begun to see her as a leader. He approached quietly, his spear resting on his shoulder, his expression grave. Adeobi, he said, pulling her aside from the group. I need to speak with you. What is it? She asked, noting the urgency in his voice. Aguba is planning something, Obi said. I overheard Nwaifa and his men talking near the marketplace. They mentioned your family's compound. Adeobi's heart skipped a beat. My family? What are they planning? They didn't say much, but I'm certain it's an attack, Obi replied. You need to be prepared. Adeobi clenched her fists, anger simmering beneath her fear. If Aguba thinks he can break me by hurting my family, he's wrong. I won't let him win. Obi placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying. You're not alone in this. We'll stand guard tonight. He won't catch us off guard. The night was unnervingly still. The usual sounds of crickets and distant drums were absent, replaced by an eerie silence that made the hairs on the back of Adeobi's neck stand on end. She sat with Chaik near the entrance to their family compound, her lamp flickering between them. Obi and a small group of young men had stationed themselves in strategic positions around the compound. They were armed with machetes, spears, and wooden clubs, makeshift weapons against what they knew would come. It wasn't long before the shadows moved. Nwaifa and his men crept toward the compound, their torches hidden beneath their cloaks. They moved like ghosts, their footsteps silent on the dry earth. As they reached the perimeter of the compound, Nwaifa raised a hand, signaling his men to spread out. But before they could act, Obi stepped out of the shadows, his spear glinting in the moonlight. You're not welcome here, he said, his voice low but commanding. Nwaifa froze, his men hesitating behind him. This isn't your fight, Hunter, Nwaifa said, trying to sound confident. Step aside. Obi's grip on his spear tightened. Adeobi's fight is my fight. Leave now, or you'll regret it. More figures emerged from the darkness, Chaik and the young men who had pledged to protect the compound. They surrounded Nwaifa and his men, their expressions hard and unyielding. Nwaifa's bravado faltered. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice trembling. Aguba won't forget this. Neither will we, Chaik said, stepping forward. Go back to him and tell him this. We're not afraid of him. Nwaifa hesitated for a moment longer before motioning to his men. They retreated into the shadows, their torches extinguished. News of the thwarted attack spread quickly through the village. By morning, the story had grown, exaggerated with each retelling. Some said Obi had single-handedly faced off against 20 men. Others claimed Chaik had cursed Aguba's name aloud, daring him to retaliate. In the marketplace, whispers of admiration for Adeobi grew louder. Women who had once avoided her now spoke of her bravery openly. Young men who had feared Aguba's wrath began to question his power. But in Aguba's compound, the atmosphere was anything but celebratory. Nwaifa knelt before the chief, his head bowed in shame. You failed me, Aguba snarled, pacing furiously. A group of boys stopped you. Do you realize what this makes me look like? Chief, they were prepared, Nwaifa said, his voice trembling. They knew we were coming. Aguba stopped, his eyes narrowing. Then we'll hit them harder. If they want a war, I'll give them one. That evening, Adeobi stood by the river, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what had happened. She had stood up to Aguba, but she knew this was only the beginning. He would not stop until he had crushed her completely. Obi joined her, his presence as steadying as ever. You did well last night, he said. I didn't do anything, Adeobi replied. You and Chaik were the ones who stopped them. You're wrong, Obi said. You've done more than you realize. You've shown people that they don't have to live in fear. That's why Aguba is so desperate to stop you. Adeobi turned to him, her gaze softening. Thank you, Obi. For everything. He smiled faintly. This is far from over. But we'll face it together. Over the next few days, Adeobi's resistance gained momentum. More young women began to join her, inspired by her courage. They gathered by the river at dusk, sharing their dreams of a future where they could choose their own paths. The young men who had stood with her during the attack became her strongest allies, their loyalty unwavering. Even Chaik, who had initially been reluctant to involve himself, began to see the importance of their fight. We're stronger than they think, Chaik said one evening. Aguba's power is built on fear. Once that fear is gone, he has nothing. Adeobi nodded, determination burning in her eyes. Then let's take away his power. In his compound, Aguba sat alone, his mind racing with fury and desperation. His plans had failed, his men had been humiliated, and his authority was slipping. He knew he needed to act quickly if he was to regain control. Bring the elders to me, he ordered Nwaifa. If I can't destroy her through force, I'll destroy her through tradition. Nwaifa nodded and left to carry out the order. Aguba leaned back in his chair, his face twisted into a cruel smile. This isn't over, Adeobi, he muttered, not by a long shot.